0500 hours. The Yellow Sea, 60 miles off the coast. A thick, suffocating fog clings to the water, obscuring the horizon in every direction. The ocean surface is oily and flat, barely rippling under the steel bows of 8 Israeli corvettes moving in a tight column formation. Navigation lights blink rhythmically, casting pale green and red glows into the mist. On the bridge of the lead ship, the only sound is the low, steady vibration of the diesel engines and the soft whir of ventilation fans. Crew members stand at their stations, sipping lukewarm coffee, their faces illuminated by the soft blue light of radar consoles. The morning feels heavy and still. A few miles to the east, a massive, rusted merchant vessel drifts silently with its engines cut. On its deck, hydraulic locks hiss sharply. The steel doors of 20 shipping containers swing open simultaneously. A low buzzing sound begins, initially faint like a distant hive of angry hornets. It grows louder, vibrating against the steel plating of the deck. Hundreds of small rotors spin up to maximum RPM. The first wave of first-person view drones surges out of the dark containers. They pour into the gray sky, a black cloud of plastic and high explosives creating a deafening mechanical hum. They do not fly in formation, they swarm. They dip and weave just 10 feet above the water, accelerating fast toward the magnetic signatures of the warships. The Irish operators, hidden deep within the merchant ship's hull, twitch their control sticks with surgical precision. The drone swarm accelerates to 80 miles per hour. They cut through the fog banks like jagged knives. On the lead corvette, a lookout drops his binoculars. He screams a warning into the intercom. It is too late. The first drone slams into the forward deck railing. The explosion rips the steel apart. Shrapnel sprays across the bow, shredding rigging and sensor arrays. A second drone dives directly into the reinforced glass of the bridge windows. The glass shatters inward in a shower of razor-sharp fragments. Fire engulfs the control room instantly. The alarm klaxon blares, tearing through the morning calm. The captain on the second ship grabs the radio handset. He roars for weapons free. He orders the flotilla to break formation and engage point defense systems immediately. The formation fractures as helmsmen spin wheels hard to starboard. Black smoke begins to rise from the lead ship, mixing with the fog to blot out the rising sun. The relentless buzz of the approaching swarm drowns out the screams of the wounded. 0515 hours, Yellow Sea Combat Zone. The heavy fog is now streaked with thick, oily black smoke. The morning air smells of burning circuit boards and high-octane fuel. On the decks of the remaining 7 corvettes, red battle lights flash frantically against the gray mist. The low hum of the drone swarm has amplified into a deafening, unified scream, sounding like a massive turbine engine tearing itself apart. Sailors sprint across the slippery steel decks, helmets unbuckled, vests half-secured, scrambling toward heavy machine gun mounts. The automated close-in weapon systems on the starboard side of the second ship spin up with a mechanical whine. The 6-barrel rotary cannons unleash a torrent of tungsten. A long tongue of orange flame erupts from the barrels. The sound is a continuous, ripping roar that vibrates through the hull. Thousands of tracer rounds slice into the fog, creating a wall of fire. The lead drones disintegrate in mid-air, showering the water with plastic shrapnel and lithium batteries. But for every drone destroyed, 10 more fill the gap. The swarm moves like a liquid, flowing around the streams of gunfire, diving erratically to confuse the radar tracking logic. A cluster of 5 suicide drones breaks through the defensive screen of the 3rd Corvette. They dive in a vertical spiral. The first drone slams into the primary radar mast. The metal structure buckles and collapses onto the bridge wing. Sparks shower down like fireworks. The second drone navigates directly into the open exhaust funnel. A muffled thump shakes the keel. A split second later, the funnel vomits a geyser of fire and soot. On the stern of the 4th ship, a gunner fires a heavy machine gun until the barrel glows red. He screams for an ammo reload. A loader rushes forward with a fresh box. A drone impacts the railing 3 feet away. The explosion hurls both men backward. They crash against the bulkhead, their bodies limp. Blood sprays across the gray paint. The flotilla commander shouts over the tactical net, his voice breaking through the static. He orders the ships to increase speed to flank and initiate evasive zigzag maneuvers. The helmsmen fight the wheels, banking the heavy vessels hard into the waves. The ocean churns white as the propellers bite into the water, but the swarm matches their speed effortlessly. 0520 hours. Yellow Sea. The defensive perimeter is collapsing. The air is thick with the acrid stench of cordite and melting plastic. On the 5th Corvette, the point defense cannons run dry. The barrels smoke, heat waves shimmering in the cold morning air. The sudden silence of the guns is terrifying. Sailors look up, their faces pale under soot and grime. The drone swarm senses the lull. The mechanical buzzing pitch rises as they accelerate for the kill. A coordinated flight of 20 drones targets the midships of the defenseless vessel. They strike in rapid succession, one after another. The impacts sound like a giant hammer striking an anvil. Bang, 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 the hull plating shreds. The explosions rip open the external bulkheads, exposing piping and electrical conduits. A fire suppression pipe bursts, spraying white foam uselessly onto the burning deck. On the bridge of the flagship, the tactical officer screams that the targeting radar is jammed. The screens show only snow and static ghost images. The Irish operators are flooding the spectrum with noise. The captain slams his fist onto the chart table. He grabs the manual override for the chaff launchers. He punches the button. Clouds of silver foil strips explode into the air around the ship, glittering in the firelight. The drones waver for a second, their optical sensors confused by the reflection. But the confusion is brief. The drones switch to thermal tracking. They lock onto the heat of the engines and the exhaust vents. On the 6th Corvette, a drone flies directly through an open, watertight door. It detonates deep inside the crew mess. The blast blows the heavy steel door off its hinges. It cartwheels across the deck and crushes a railing. Smoke pours from the hatch, thick and yellow. A sailor on the bow of the 7th ship raises an assault rifle. He fires wildly at the sky. A drone dives at him. He dives prone. The drone misses him by inches and slams into the anchor chain winch. The machinery shatters. Metal gears fly like shrapnel, pinging off the superstructure. The sailor covers his head, trembling as debris rains down. The ocean around the flotilla is now littered with burning wreckage. Patches of oil catch fire, creating floating islands of flame. The ships are trapped in a cage of their own making. 0530 hours, Yellow Sea battle space. The fog has burned away, replaced by a curtain of heavy black smoke that blots out the sky. The ocean churns violently, whipped into whitecaps by the erratic maneuvering of the desperate vessels. The lead Corvette, already battered and trailing oil, slows to a crawl. Its engines sputter and cough dark exhaust. The hull groans audibly over the roar of the combat. Above it, the scattered elements of the drone swarm suddenly coalesce. They stop attacking the perimeter ships and gather into a tight, dense ball directly over the crippled flagship. The buzzing sound intensifies to a piercing shriek. The swarm drops. 50 explosive drones dive simultaneously in a vertical column. It looks like a solid spear of black plastic driving into the ship. The first dozen drones smash through the ruined windows of the bridge. The command center detonates from the inside out. The roof peels back like the lid of a tin can. A massive fireball erupts from the superstructure, hurling radar dishes and antenna arrays into the sea. The blast wave shatters the glass on the neighboring ship 200 yards away. The remaining drones in the dive column strike the waterline on the port side. The explosions are muffled and deep, sending geysers of white water 100 feet into the air. The steel hull plating buckles, then shears completely. The ocean rushes into the breach with a roar. The Corvette shudders violently, stopping dead in the water. Immediately, the deck tilts. The ship lists hard to port. Unsecured equipment, ammunition crates, fire extinguishers, tools slides rapidly across the steel, crashing into the lower railing. Sailors scramble on hands and knees, clawing for handholds as the floor becomes a wall. One sailor loses his grip. He slides 20 feet down the angled deck and smashes into a winch, his legs snapping audibly. He screams, but the sound is swallowed by the groaning metal. The surviving executive officer on the aft deck grabs a handheld radio. He yells for all hands to abandon ship. He cuts the strap on a life raft canister. The canister rolls into the water and inflates with a hiss. Sailors jump from the high side of the listing hull, plummeting 30 feet into the oil-covered waves. The ship continues to roll, the top of the mast now dipping toward the horizon. 0545 hours, Yellow Sea. The chaos spreads. The first Corvette is now a burning wreck, rolling onto its side. The 7 remaining ships are scattered, their formation shattered beyond repair. The ocean surface is a chaotic mix of white foam, black oil, and orange flames. The Irish drone operators, sensing the panic, shift tactics instantly. The swarm splits into smaller hunter-killer packs. On Corvette 3, the electronic warfare officer screams that the jamming systems are overheating. He reboots the console, it flickers and dies. The drones have switched frequencies again, or perhaps they aren't using radio at all anymore. They are using optical recognition. They see the ships, they see the movement. 2 hunter packs, roughly 20 drones each, peel off from the main cloud. They descend low, skimming inches above the waves to avoid the few remaining working radar sets. They approach Corvette 2 and Corvette 5 from the stern. On Corvette 2, a lookout spots the wake of the low-flying drones. He shouts, pointing aft. The rear phalanx cannon spins to engage. It fires a short burst. The water erupts in splashes. But the drones pop up at the last second. They soar over the gun mount and dive straight down onto the aft missile deck. Crack! Boom! The first drone detonates on the launcher tubes. The shaped charge punches through the armored casing of a loaded anti-ship missile. The solid rocket fuel inside ignites. A blinding white flash consumes the rear of the ship. The blast wave knocks the phalanx gunner unconscious in his seat. The missile magazine cooks off. A secondary explosion rips the entire stern section apart. A massive piece of steel plating, weighing 2 tons, is hurled into the air, tumbling end over end before crashing into the sea. Simultaneously, Corvette 5 takes hits on the starboard waterline. 3 drones impact the same spot, drilling a hole through the hull. Water floods the auxiliary engine room. The lights on the ship flicker and die, plunging the corridors into darkness. Emergency red lights snap on. Sailors in the engine room wade through waist-deep water, shouting over the roar of rushing sea. A pipe bursts, spraying superheated steam. A mechanic screams as the steam scalds his face and arms. He falls into the oily water. The ship lurches, losing power. It begins to drift helplessly into the path of the oncoming waves. 0600 hours, Yellow Sea. The flotilla is broken. The orchestrated defensive line has dissolved into a frantic scramble for survival. Thick pillars of black smoke rise from 3 separate vessels, marking their positions like signal flares. The remaining functional ships turn wildly, their wakes crossing and crisscrossing in a chaotic tapestry of white foam. On the bridge of Corvette 4, the captain grabs the radio handset. He abandons standard protocol. He screams for the ships to scatter. All stations, break formation, save yourselves, independent maneuvering. The order is barely audible over the roar of damage control alarms. The drone swarm adapts instantly. They stop diving for the bridges. They drop to the water level, hovering just above the wave tops. They target the sterns. They hunt the propulsion. A pair of drones races toward the stern of Corvette 4. They dive underwater 3 yards from the hull. They detonate. The underwater shockwave hammers the port propeller. The steel blades twist and shear off. The shaft shatters inside the housing. The ship shudders violently, the engine RPM spiking red as the load vanishes. The vessel loses forward momentum, drifting sluggishly. On Corvette 7, the rudder is the target. A drone slams directly into the hinge mechanism above the waterline. The explosion welds the rudder hard to starboard. The ship lurches. It locks into a tight, uncontrollable turn. It begins to spin in a wide circle, cutting directly across the path of the other fleeing ships. Desperation takes over the crews. Mechanics, cooks, and sonar operators rush to the railings. They wield assault rifles and pistols. They shoulder their weapons, aiming at the blurring black shapes zipping overhead. They fire in ragged bursts. Brass casings litter the deck, rolling in the oil. A sailor on the fantail of the spinning ship tracks a drone. He fires. A bullet clips a rotor. The drone spins out of control. It smashes into the deck plating near his feet. He scrambles back. The warhead detonates. The blast throws him over the railing. He hits the water hard, disappearing into the churning wake. The air is filled with the pop of small arms fire, a futile sound against the mechanical roar of the swarm. The ships are no longer fighting. They are struggling to move. 0630 hours, Yellow Sea carnage. The visibility drops to near zero. Thick, acrid smoke from the burning wrecks hangs low over the water, mixing with the sea spray. Corvette 4, its propeller sheared, drifts sideways into the path of the fleeing flotilla. On Corvette 5, the helmsman fights the wheel, swerving to avoid a floating patch of burning oil. He corrects hard to port. He sees the gray wall of Corvette 4 emerge from the smoke too late. He locks the brakes on the throttle. He screams a warning. The bow of Corvette 5 plows into the midsection of Corvette 4. The impact sounds like a thunderclap, louder than the gunfire. 2,000 tons of steel slam into 2,000 tons of steel. The hull of Corvette 4 buckles inward. Metal shrieks in tears. The bow of Corvette 5 crumples like an accordion. Sparks shower the decks in a cascading waterfall of molten iron. Sailors on both ships are hurled violently across the compartments. A radar operator is thrown face-first into his console. Glass shatters. The ships grind together, locked in a metal embrace. The collision rips a massive, jagged gash open in the side of Corvette 4, exposing the cavernous engine bay to the open air. The drone swarm reacts instantly. They do not attack the outside. They dive into the wound. 10 drones bank sharply and fly directly into the torn hull of Corvette 4. They buzz through the twisted steel ribs. They enter the engine room. The turbines are still spinning. The drones fly into the machinery. Boom! Boom! The explosions are contained inside the hull. The deck plates bulge upward. The blast blows out the watertight doors, sending fire rushing down the main corridor. On Corvette 5, the shock of the impact has ruptured the fuel lines in the forward hold. A drone drifts over the crumpled bow. It drops a single grenade into the exposed wreckage. The fuel vapor ignites. A fireball consumes the entire forward section of the ship. The bridge crew is engulfed in heat and smoke. The captain stumbles backward, coughing, his uniform singed. He grabs the railing to stay upright as the ship lists heavily against the wreck of its sister vessel. The two ships groan as the waves push them against each other, grinding the steel further. They are dead in the water, burning from the inside out. 700 hours, Yellow Sea disaster zone. The fog has vanished, burned away by the sheer intensity of the heat. The ocean surface is no longer water. It is a slick of black diesel fuel and hydraulic fluid. The collision between the 4th and 5th Corvettes has ruptured the main fuel bunkers. Thick, toxic sludge pumps out of the fractured hulls, spreading rapidly across the swells like a black bruise. The air is unbreathable, choked with soot and chemical fumes. A stray spark from a hanging electrical wire drops into the water. The slick ignites. A wall of orange flame races across the surface, moving faster than a man can swim. The fire creates a ring, sealing the remaining vessels inside a burning arena. Corvette 6 sits low in the water, trapped near the center of the slick. The flames lick against the steel hull. The gray paint blisters, bubbles, and peels away in sheets. Inside, the bulkheads radiate heat like an oven. The intense temperature warps the structural frames. The ship groans, a deep, resonant sound of metal losing its integrity. Suddenly, the vessel lurches. The water intake caused by earlier drone strikes shifts the center of gravity. The ship rolls heavily to starboard. It does not stop. The list increases past 40 degrees. Loose cargo, crates, chairs, bodies, slides across the deck and smashes into the starboard railing. The railing gives way. The ship capsizes. The massive keel rises out of the burning water, dripping oil and sludge. The radar mast slams into the sea with a massive splash that momentarily douses the flames, only for them to rush back in seconds later. Sailors clinging to the high port side lose their grip. They slide down the vertical steel plating. They claw at the barnacles on the hull, fingers bleeding. Gravity wins. They fall. They plunge into the burning oil. Screams are cut short as the fire engulfs them. The hull continues to roll until it is completely inverted. Trapped air pockets inside the ship erupt, sending geysers of water shooting upward. The propellers spin slowly in the air, useless and dripping. The sea around the wreck is a cauldron of fire and debris. 0730 hours, Yellow Sea. The flagship Corvette drifts in a clearing of the smoke, the last vessel still fighting with full power. The surrounding water is a graveyard of burning debris and oil. On the bridge, the captain wipes soot from his eyes. He stares at the tactical display. It shows a solid wall of red contacts surrounding the ship. The drone swarm has stopped its erratic hunter-killer attacks. It changes formation. Thousands of drones rise from the wave tops. They begin to circle the ship in a clockwise rotation. They gain speed. The buzzing sound deepens into a low, thrumming roar that vibrates the deck plates. The swarm forms a massive, black artificial tornado, a cyclone of plastic and explosives spinning around the vessel. The tactical action officer yells that the fire control radar is overwhelmed. The computer cannot lock onto a single target. It sees a solid wall. The system crashes. The captain screams for manual fire. The forward 76mm main cannon swivels. The barrel elevates. The gunner fires. Boom! The shell ejects. A burst of black smoke erupts in the air 300 yards away. Shrapnel takes out 10 drones. The swarm instantly fills the gap. They spin faster, the wind from their rotors actually whipping up the sea spray around the hull. The cyclone tightens. The loop contracts. The drones are now flying 50 feet from the hull. A flight of 20 drones peels out of the vortex. They do not dive for the hull. They target the ship's eyes. They slam into the main 3D radar array on the top of the mast. Crack, crash. The spinning antenna shatters. Debris rains down on the bridge roof. Another group strikes the satellite communications domes. The white spheres explode into fiberglass shards. The bridge screens go black. The radio cuts to static. The main cannon prepares to fire again. A suicide drone flies directly down the barrel. It detonates deep inside the breach. The explosion splits the gun barrel open like a peeled banana. Smoke pours from the turret housing. The gunner's hatch blows open, venting yellow flame. The ship is blind. It is deaf. It is disarmed. The swarm continues to circle, a black noose tightening around the helpless steel beast. The roar of the rotors drowns out the shouting of the officers. The flagship is no longer a warship. It is a floating metal target. 800 hours, Yellow Sea, the end has come. The flagship Corvette drifts listlessly, a smoking hulk of twisted steel. Its guns are silent, its sensors are blinded. The fires on the deck have burned down to smoldering embers. The black tornado of drones that circled the ship suddenly slows. The roar of the rotors drops to a menacing, synchronized hum. The swarm halts. Thousands of drones hover motionless in the air, forming a wall of black plastic facing the starboard side of the vessel. It looks like a firing squad. A single signal is transmitted from the merchant ship miles away. The drones move as one. They do not aim for the crew or the bridge. They drop to the water's surface. They line up perfectly along the ship's length, spaced 5 meters apart, hovering inches above the waterline. They accelerate forward. Thud, 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 thud. A ripple of explosions tears along the starboard flank. It sounds like a zipper being ripped open. The shaped charges detonate simultaneously against the hull plating. The blast wave is focused inward. The steel shears cleanly along a 100-foot line. The ocean rushes in. It is not a leak, it is a flood. The sea pours into the lower compartments with the force of a breaking dam. The Corvette groans, a long, agonizing sound of metal stressing beyond its limit. The keel snaps. The ship lurches violently to starboard. The roll is instant. The deck becomes vertical. Sailors sliding down the hull scream as they hit the water. The massive gray bow rises into the air, pointing at the sky like a tombstone. The Israeli flag on the stern dips below the surface, swallowed by the black sludge. Air vents erupt, spraying mist as the pressure builds inside. Then, with a final sucking gasp, the vessel slides backward. The water churns white, then settles. The ship is gone. The remaining drones hover over the oil slick for a moment, recording the destruction. Then, they turn in unison. They climb into the gray sky, buzzing back toward the east. Miles away, the rusted merchant ship closes its container doors. Hydraulic locks engage with a heavy clank. The engines rumble to life. The ship turns slowly, fading into the returning mist. The Yellow Sea is empty. Silence returns to the water.